Welcome to episode 11 of In the Abstract, the Lakeland Title podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Jeansonne, the founder and owner of Lakeland Title. For this week's episode, I know we usually do real estate related topics, but there was a legal topic that came up in the news that I just thought was very interesting. The Louisiana Attorney General has sued a reporter with the Advocate newspaper, and that's kind of a very strange, unusual thing. So I wanted to bring on a good friend of mine, Scott Sternberg, to discuss the case with me. He is actually the attorney for the Advocate and the reporter in question. I've worked with Scott before, and he's a very good lawyer. We've teamed up on some cases before. He's a business litigation and general business consulting attorney and media law and First Amendment law expert with the law firm of Sternberg, Naccari and White in New Orleans, Louisiana. So without further ado, welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here.
So I saw this case, and it's just very unusual because it's the Attorney General of Louisiana suing a reporter over a public records request. And usually it's the other way around. Usually it's a reporter that sues to get their public information. And so how is this case kind of different? What's the story here?
Well, it's interesting. You know, we've had a few of these cases in Louisiana, and I actually am litigating one in Monroe right now. I had a previous case in Tallulah, Louisiana, which I'm sure you've never been to, but it's a nice little town. And
I've heard of it.
You know, they're called reverse public record suits, and they're sweeping the country, quite frankly, because you know we have a real interesting dichotomy of privacy and the right to review in all the states under their public records law. And the right to privacy is something that people are very interested in right now. Particularly government actors. They're worried that if they produce records that they will be sued for invasion of privacy or that people won't want to work for them. But the reality is that most of these folks are public employees, and so their right to privacy and things like their salary is diminished, right? The salary of LSU's football coach is a public record. You know, you've probably seen it published in the Advocate. You know, the idea is that if you make money from the taxpayers, we get to see how much you make. Well, in this case, Andrea Gallo had requested some investigation records from a sexual harassment allegation. And, you know, we had made a threat of litigation, but, you know, before we got the chance to file, you know, Mr. Landry or General Landry had decided to sue Andrea preemptively. Why he decided to do that, I do not know, but you know that was his decision, and he's asking the court to declare that he doesn't have to turn over these records of a sexual harassment investigation into one of his top deputies. And the case has been assigned to Judge Tim Kelly, who's a good judge in Baton Rouge, and you know we're looking forward to litigating this matter in front of him because we feel like it's something that really needs to be decided by Judge Kelly. First, whether or not this kind of suit is legal or should be legal, and second, whether the public should get to see these documents.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, are these documents usually documents that are disclosed? I thought any sort of like PR matters was usually things that could be disclosed with a public records request.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a case-by-case basis. I mean, usually you can't get somebody's personnel file, right? Like a normal, run-of-the-mill government employee who gets a regular review by their boss or the executive director or the elected official they work for, you usually can't get that kind of stuff. Otherwise, anytime somebody who worked for the government applied for a job in the private sector would go public records request their entire employment file, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some litigation. I mean, there's some previous cases that say that you can't get somebody's personnel file per se, but there are exceptions. And, a prominent case is actually from Baton Rouge. It was a post-Katrina case where we had some police officers that were accused of doing some things that were very untoward toward the evacuees from New Orleans. And the court in that case actually found that the public's right to know overrode the right to privacy that those policemen had. And so we got to see their internal investigation files. And I think this is probably more like a police officer than just a run-of-the-mill employee, but we'll have to see what the judge says.
Is this the first time that this has been done in Louisiana? You said these suits are kind of sweeping the nation, but is this the first time it's happened in Louisiana? Do you know, or?
No, there's been 4 or 5 of them in Louisiana at least since I started paying attention in the late 2000s. There were 2 in North Louisiana in the last 5 years. Both of those were my cases. There was one in Baton Rouge where the Department of Education sued a number of public records requesters, trying to claim that federal law would not allow them to turn over records which would already be public under state law. Some of those cases are still ongoing, actually. So it's not unheard of, but it's very uncommon.
Okay. And why wouldn't they have just, stated some kind of exception to the request, or just not fulfilled the request instead of preemptively suing? I
don't know. I guess there's some kind of PR, somebody thought it would look better if they sued this 28-year-old reporter, but I don't, that person made a bad calculation, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of odd just because it kind of seems like the Streisand effect. Like, it's just kind of a story.
They turned Andrea Gallo into the victim, which, is, the victim here really is the person who was sexually harassed, right? And if Andrea Gallo had filed suit, then there might have been a public outcry. We want to see these records. There's sexual harassment going on in the AG's office. We want to know about it. Instead, what the Attorney General did was he compounded the victim on top of another victim, with, Miss Gallo, who's, as I said, a 28-year-old reporter. She's going to have to list that she's a defendant in a lawsuit if she applies for a mortgage and tries to close her, transaction with your title company. It could really affect her credit. So really a poor choice on his part, if you ask me, but, I don't know why he did it.
Yeah. And I just think it kind of brings attention to something that I don't think it was really on a lot of people's radar. I mean, the news was out there, but I think it just kind of brought attention to something that probably could have just gone away otherwise.
Right. I mean, the Streisand effect is real. We see it all the time in the media bar. Somebody's trying to cover something up, and instead they file a lawsuit about it, and it winds up bringing it to the top. I mean, you saw that with my Frank Scurlock lawsuit earlier last year, where Mr. Scurlock was accused of doing some untoward things in the back of an Uber, and he sued the Advocate and the Times-Picayune trying to shut it up. And what wound up happening is the internet went crazy, and the story went to the top of all the rankings at NOLA.com, because everybody wanted to read about this guy who sued because of some pretty salacious allegations. But the Streisand effect is real, particularly in this internet culture that we live in today.
Yeah. So I mean, anything else you want to talk about with the case? Any kind of other interesting aspects?
No, I mean, it's a fascinating problem. I'm excited to get to work on it. Very blessed that I get to work with the Advocate and so many other news organizations. I represent, gray media stations there's a gray media station in Baton Rouge. There's one here in New Orleans, and, also the Louisiana Press Association. So, I get to work on these issues regularly. It's kind of a dream come true for me, because I grew up wanting to be a reporter, worked at the Reveille in college, did some freelancing, and then I went to law school, and, basically have my dream job, which, I know you do too. It's kind of working for yourself, living the dream. But, these are really serious allegations. If they're, just like when the governor had someone in his office that was allegedly sexually harassing folks, the media wanted to know about it, and the people wanted to know about it. And, just like that, there's someone in General Landry's office that is accused of some, pretty interesting and salacious things. And, we want to get to the bottom of it. And, we're not trying to out the victim. We don't want to hurt the victim. That's not our goal. Our goal is to see how your tax dollars are being paid and who they're being paid to.
Okay. Very interesting. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
It's interesting, Brian, the public records law, when I learned about it in law school, it was really written for people like you, for real estate lawyers. Somebody would come to the mortgage document center in New Orleans, they go to the recorder of mortgages, or in Baton Rouge, they go to the clerk of court, and they needed to see all the mortgages that had been placed and all the transfers of certain pieces of title. But really, what it was really written for was the oil companies when they were trying to get their leases and see who owned the rights. It wasn't necessarily just this altruistic, we want people to be able to get public records. It's a constitutional right, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of business involved in this too. And so, I represent entities like Zillow, which everyone has been online, and they just had this hilarious Super Bowl commercial, fake Super Bowl commercial that was on Saturday Night Live. That company operates on public records. They get the assessor database, and that's how they come up with the Zestimate, right? Is they look at the public records and they say, well, Scott Sternberg's house is worth, $300,000 based on comparables in the area. So, there's a lot of businesses that work on public records. And so it's very fun to do that kind of work as well in this practice.
Yeah. Are you hearing any kind of buzz that the legislature might make some changes to the public records laws because of all this kind of stuff?
I've had some legislators reach out. They're pretty angry. But this is a tough issue, and making changes to the public records law is always very hard. When you start to tinker with it, you definitely don't want to make it worse, right? And sometimes you think you're doing a good thing and you're actually not. I wouldn't shock me if we made some changes, but a couple of years ago when my client in Tallulah got sued, Representative Ray Garofalo saw all the coverage and decided to write a bill that said you couldn't sue a person for making a public records request. And he wrote the bill, and he showed up in committee, and 10 minutes after he showed up, it was killed because the local governments and the clerks of court and the district attorneys, they don't want to affect their ability to exercise this judicial intervention. But what we did get from Representative Garofalo was a provision that says if you get sued and you win, you get your attorney's fees and costs. And so, good things can happen from bad situations like this. And, hopefully someone will have the courage like Representative Garofalo did a couple of years back, and we can outlaw these suits because they really should not be legal.
Yeah. Has any kind of hearing date or anything been set? What's the next step?
We've been assigned to Judge Kelly, and I'm going to be communicating with his chambers shortly to see what kind of briefing schedule he wants. But I would expect that we'll have a hearing within the next month. These things go very, very quickly.
Okay. So what else is going on in New Orleans?
It's a weird time right now with all the COVID restrictions. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook complaining about them, but they shut down all the bars through Mardi Gras, and so everybody's kind of in their own little bubble. We're back in the office mainly because we just had to get out of our houses and start working again. But in New Orleans, it's a tourism-based economy, and so there's a lot of people here who are really hurting, and so hopefully, Congress will come through with something for the hospitality industry because we are really hurting down here.
Oh yeah. And have you been to court lately? I don't go to court anymore, but have you been lately? How's that working out?
Yeah, so I had a trial last week in the 24th JDC in Jefferson Parish. It was just a little 3-hour trial, and I've had a few hearings at Civil District Court. But the advent of Zoom is really just an amazing thing for courts. Something simple like a status conference or a motion to compel, something very small. We have to charge the client to go over there. You sit there forever. You're waiting. I mean, you're a courtroom lawyer. The great thing about Zoom is that you just turn it off until your case is called, and then you turn your video on. And I really think that the advent of Zoom, and if we can get the courts across this state to adopt Zoom as an alternative to in-person hearings for small things, we can save people a whole lot of money in lawyer fees. So I really hope that one of the good things that comes out of this is that we get some reform on appearances. I have a case in Catahoula right now and another one in Vernon Parish, and those places are 3-4 hour drives from here. Not that I mind driving, I like driving, but save the client a whole lot of money if I could just hop on the video screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a little less of that hurry up and wait that happens so often at the courthouse.
My good friend Judge Slagle is kind of an innovator in this tech world, and he was using Zoom before the pandemic. And we've talked a lot about, if we can get some uniform rules on how to use video, how we can really help access to justice, which is such an important thing, pro se litigants, and most importantly, the actual cost of litigation can be driven down. I mean, you're a transactional lawyer primarily, so you don't have to go to court as much as I do, but it's just a very expensive, frustrating process for the client. And even when you win, they're still not thrilled about how much it costs to attend. So hopefully we can get some good things out of this.
Yeah, I mean, because I never used to charge my clients for like going to court in town, but when I got in there, like that's when the clock started. So when I got in that courtroom, if I'm sitting around just kind of waiting for all this peripheral little matters to get handled, I'm charging for that because that's my time. You can't just sit around there for 3 hours and not charge for that. So.
Yeah, I mean, a lawyer's time is his stock in trade. That's the moniker. But the idea is that if we can cut down on that whole process of, I don't charge to go to court around here, just like walk across the street to the civil district court or drive to the 24th across the river. But if I'm going to Vernon Parish, I'm getting paid to go there.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things. And of course, with some of the hurricanes last year, we have some courts in exile right now where things are going on almost only by Zoom because of that situation. So, hopefully we can turn this into a good thing for access to justice.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, anything else you wanted to talk about? How's the firm going? Everything's going good?
Yeah, firm's going well. We're very, tech forward, young, kind of punching above our weight class. That's what we're looking for. We're not doing personal injury. We're really focused in on business. We think there's a lot of people who are looking for business lawyers. Got two of my partners that are tax lawyers, so focusing on that a lot. And, we really leaned into the PPP stuff. When everybody else went dark, we went hard into, coronavirus relief. And so, if folks are interested in the Paycheck Protection Program, either version 1 or 2, you can find all about that at our website, which is snw.law. So it's Sternberg, Naccari and White.law. And, it's free money. And if you're not taking advantage of it, it's to your own detriment. So I would encourage everybody to explore these programs because they're keeping a lot of businesses alive right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a very interesting discussion, and thanks for being on the show. And so if anybody needs to find Scott, you can give him a call at 504-324-1887, or you can email him at scott@snw.law, or you can find him on Twitter, which is Scott L. Sternberg, or on Instagram, which is at SNW Law Firm. So that's all the ways to reach out. Go follow him on Twitter. It's an interesting follow.
I love Twitter. Twitter is like my vice. I don't gamble, and I very rarely drink. So I got to have something to let it out because I don't have time to work out. So might as well just play on Twitter all day. So
yeah, there you go.
Gets me in trouble sometimes. I've had opposing counsel use my tweets against me in a court of law. So
oh really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got to get a little better about making. I'm trying not to make comments about my cases.
Yeah.
But like when Jeff Landry posts a 12 tweet storm about how we're misleading people at the Advocate, it took a lot for me not to respond. Let's put it that way. So
yeah, you can always do it after the case is over. You can always respond then. So.
That's right. Well, I'm hoping to respond with results.
Yeah.
Be the goal, so.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Bryan, I appreciate you having me on today, and let me know if I can ever be of service.
Yeah, next time something crazy comes up on Twitter, we'll have to get on and talk about it again.
Anytime.
Oh, yeah? All right,
my friend. Take care.
Talk to you later. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that interview with Scott Sternberg about that very interesting legal case. If anybody from the AG's office is listening and would like to come on and talk about their side of the story, we'd love to discuss that with you, so just feel free to reach out. If you need to find my company on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Lakeland Title BR, on Instagram at Lakeland Title BR, on Facebook at BR Closing. Or if you need to find me on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at bjeansonne and on Instagram at bgjeansonne. I've also just joined Clubhouse, so you can find me there at bjeansonne. If you want to contact the show, you can email us at podcast@brclosing.com, or you can email me personally, Bryan, Bryan, at brclosing.com, or you can just give us a call the old-fashioned way at 225-387-5005. So I hope y'all enjoyed that episode. Feel free to reach out if there's other things you want me to talk about or other guests you'd like me to have. We always love to get input from our listeners. Otherwise, see y'all next time.